Hello everyone, thanks for clicking and checking out this video. I'm going to share with you today my coursework that I've prepared. Very excited about it. The title of my presentation will be Food Science, Physics, and Engineering Classes at Home Your Children and You Will Love. And I'm excited about this stuff. So let's take a look. A little bit about me first. I'm a professional food scientist. I have a bachelor's and a master's degree in food science. I'm a Lego enthusiast. That's how my company, Beakers and Bricks, was formed. Beakers for the science and bricks for Legos, for the Lego bricks and Lego sets. I'm 54 years old. I still purchase and collect them and work with them myself. I find it very relaxing. I'm the owner of Beakers and Bricks. Started that here just a couple of years ago. I'm also an original Star Wars nut. I was 11 when it came out. I saw it in the theaters 7 times before it was out of the theaters. Dabble in real estate investment. We built a house from the ground up and remodeled, I don't even know how many. I have my general contractor's license, and we've played a little bit with land development here in North Carolina. Just to summarize, I enjoy digging in the dirt, basically, is what that amounts to ever since I was a little kid with my Tonka trucks. I'm married to my wife, Leanne, for 32 years. We have 3 kids. The last one just graduated from high school last year and will be out of the house, it looks like, here in about a month. At which point we'll be have our company kept by a dog and 3 cats. We've lived all over the place: California, Massachusetts, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Utah, Colorado, and most recently here in North Carolina, where we've been for a little over 10 years. And we love it here, and we plan on staying unless disaster strikes and we have to move. I'm fluent in Spanish. I'm working on Russian and Fijian. I love languages. They're fun to study. So, enough about me. So what's food science? Food science is the science of cooking. Answer questions such as, why do egg whites turn white? We know they do, but why do they? And then why don't they turn back clear when they cool down? Pie crusts, sometimes they're nice and flaky when you make them, if you've made pies at home. And other times, your pie crust can be tough. What the heck happened? What's going on? Beef. The same cut of beef, if you fry it in a pan, if you just slice a piece off and fry it in the pan, it might be really tough, depending on what you bought. But if you take that same piece and stick it in the oven for about 3 hours, it's fall apart tender, super tender, and very easy to chew and to cut and to eat. What's going on there? How about green vegetables like broccoli and asparagus? If you steam them in a pot, they turn bright green, but if you go just a couple minutes longer, they'll turn olive green, and then in the case of broccoli, they turn to mush. What happened? Why is shortening called shortening? And what about gluten? We hear a lot about gluten or gluten-free foods or whatever in our grocery stores today. What is the big deal with gluten, and what is it? How about freezer burn and leavening? How things rise, like cakes and breads. When you bake them, they rise. Why do they? And how do they? What's going on? It's different for both of those, by the way. So food science, it explains what's happening in the kitchen. It explains what actually is going on with the food itself. You'll find that you see it every day, but you may not have ever wondered about it, or you did wonder about it, and now you'll find out. Some of you might be familiar with Alton Brown, who was he's still on the Food Network, I think. We don't actually get that anymore, but I believe he's still on there. He had a show where he got into food science a little bit. This is kind of like him on steroids, if you're familiar with Alton Brown. It's what's happening in the food, and I think many people find it very interesting, even if you're just a little bit curious. You'll have tons of aha moments like, that's what's going on. Now, a word of caution: being a good food scientist doesn't necessarily make you a good cook. It can help you become a better cook. Let me explain. I worked with a guy when I was at Post Cereals, who started out as a chef. He actually had a degree in culinary science. Now, a person who has a degree in culinary science, they actually go to school to understand how to be creative and how to put all the flavors together and make something that tastes amazing, and how the different flavors work with each other. That's not food science. That's culinary science. They'll get a little bit of science in their training, but depending on the school and the elective classes that they take, but they don't get a lot. So that's being a chef. Now, being a food scientist, you get a little bit of the creative side, but it's mostly the science of what's happening. So not necessarily which flavors go together and how they work, but how different components of the food might interact with each other and combine and change one another. The combination of those two, if you have a culinary degree and a food science degree, that's highly sought after. In fact, this guy that I worked with, he got tired of the life of a chef where he was working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, pretty much running a very nice restaurant. Who went back and got his master's degree, and that combination for food companies is highly sought after. So that brings up the next thing. What do you do? What do food scientists do? Well, one of the things that attracted me to food science was it combines all of the sciences. So I didn't want to be a chemist or a microbiologist or a physicist or any of the ists really, but I found out I could be a food scientist and combine all of those things into an applied discipline. Let me explain. And I'll go through very quickly some of my how my career went. I started out with General Mills, who owned Gorton's Seafood at the time. You guys all know the Gorton's fishermen, right? The guy with the big yellow slicker and the hat. It was a great place to work. I was in Gloucester, Massachusetts. Didn't know how good that I had it until I left. My office overlooked Gloucester Harbor. Went for walks on the beach. It was nice. So what I did, I worked primarily in product development. These are two of the products that I developed: Parmesan fillets, lemon herb fillets. And then I worked on improving these ones, the fish fillets and the fish sticks, and troubleshooting and helping to support this product, lemon pepper batter dipped fillets, which was already in the market. There are quite a few other things that I did, but that's primarily what I did. So let me explain real briefly about product development, because this is a big misconception that people have. I always get the question, why do food companies make their food so addictive? And I've worked for a lot of the big companies, and you'll see in a minute, for Kraft, for General Foods, or General Mills, for Kellogg's, Malto Meal. None of these places, Nabisco, the Nabisco research site, none of these places did I get an assignment saying, hey, you need to put this in to make this addictive so that people will want to eat it all the time. What we did do is what food scientists do when they're doing product development is they get a concept from the marketing folks. They've determined, okay, people want a Parmesan fillet, we'll say, for example, or this Parmesan fillet. And they want it to be crunchy. They want it to have that the flavor of the Parmesan on cheese. They want that to come through. And this is what they want. And so they give me that task as the food scientist. So I go to work. I go to the seasoning companies that make the seasoning blends and the cheeses and all of those things, and we work and we put all that together, and we do a lot of consumer tests. So we take our prototypes, a whole bunch of different flavored, seasoned fillets, to the consumers, and we have them try them. We actually heat them or cook them and have them try them out, and they say, okay, we like that one, and this one is a little too salty, this one's not quite strong enough. And so then we work and we refine that, and we make it until we've got it almost as close as we can get to exactly what the consumers want. And then we put that into a big test to see if, when they actually use it at home, yep, that's the one we want. And we might put a couple, 2 or 3 of those out there to make sure that we have the one that consumers really like. And so, kind of just because of that process, while we're not trying to make it addictive, as food scientists, we are trying to make it exactly what the consumers want. And as a business, that's really what you have to do. I mean, if you make a Parmesan fillet that people buy it and they try it and they go, oh, That is nasty. I don't want to buy that ever again. Well, your business isn't going to survive for very long. And unfortunately, well, the same thing goes for example, a Frito-Lay potato chip or a Dorito. The food scientists there are trying to make the best Dorito that they can, the one that consumers absolutely love. And because they mostly have succeeded at that, well, you eat it and you like it and you want to keep eating it. So in a way, giving consumers what they want is sort of making it addictive because it's what you want, it's what you like. So, but there's nothing nefarious, there's nothing evil about it. It's just trying to be a good business and to make products that people want and will buy again and again and again. So that's my spiel. Okay, after Post, I went to work for Kraft in their Post division. I worked on Oreo O's, Honey Bunches of Oats, in the way of for Honey Bunches of Oats, I developed a fruit frosted flake for a different project, and then after I had left Post, they revived that project and used those fruit frosted flakes in these products, with some minor modifications from what I understand. Worked on improving honeycomb, bunches of other projects that I worked on. It was a lot of fun. After a while, Kraft bought Nabisco and rolled the research for cream of wheat and cream of rice up to Battle Creek, Michigan. That's where I was for Post. And I was in charge of doing all of that research for a while, including decommissioning a plant and moving production to a couple of other facilities, one in a different country, up in Canada and then elsewhere, for producing the products. Learned a lot. It was a lot of fun. It was very interesting. Didn't necessarily like closing down a plant, but that was part of the job. I transferred to the main Nabisco research site, which was located in East Hanover, New Jersey, and that's where they do all the research for Oreos and Triscuits and Cheese Nips and all the Lifesavers and all that fun stuff. And ended up working on Planters nuts, doing process optimization and automation. It was my first time I was introduced to this. I loved it. I'm in the plant and I'm in the production facility, and I'm working on automating their production lines so that you get the perfect roasted nut every time. And it was the right color, the right moisture content, and it was exactly what the consumers wanted all the time, and it was produced in a way so that the company also wouldn't lose money. That was kind of the goal, and I found that very interesting and rewarding. However, my commute was about 140 miles a day. Spent 3 hours at least on the road every day, and that got really tiresome. So when Kellogg's called to go back to Battle Creek, I knew I'd be backed down to like a 10 to 15 minute commute, and it actually ended up being about a 10-minute commute to get from my front door to sitting down at my desk. And I was ready for that after 2.5 years of driving and driving and driving. In fact, we lived in Pennsylvania because it was too expensive to live in New Jersey. And there at Kellogg's, I got to work on a bunch of stuff I hadn't worked on before. Cookies and crackers. I developed this reduced fat white cheddar Cheez-It. Not this one, but a Halloween Rainbow Chips Deluxe. A Butter Herb Club Sticks. Scooby-Doo EL Fudge. And Bug Bites. And it was actually during this time, while it's a lot of fun to see your products on the store shelves, I actually got kind of tired of it. I'm tired of the whole product development process. It was very much the same moving forward all the time, and I wanted to get back to what I did with the Planters nuts, doing troubleshooting. Switched to the international division, supporting their cereal businesses overseas and some other stuff. So I spent quite a bit of time traveling in Mexico. As I mentioned, I speak Spanish. But then supported groups in Japan, in South Korea, and in South Africa, and also in India. And I went to all those places except for India to help. And that was a lot of fun, but the plants all looked the same on the inside, and the travel was kind of tedious, especially since I didn't have anybody with me. My family didn't come, so it was just me. I'm there, and it was interesting. I did get to do some sightseeing, but not an awful lot. But I did find that fun, and it was interesting. After a while, it was Malto called, and they offered me a position to go work in their new ready-to-eat cereal facility as the on-site research representative called the site scientist. and I would be able to get back to doing optimization of the process line, and really wasn't going to be doing anything in the way of new product development anymore. It was product support and optimization. That's really what I found I enjoyed the most, found most challenging. So I didn't really jump at the chance, but I was interested enough to where after some thought I decided to take the job. They changed their name to Mom Brands, and then Post I can't remember what the name of the company was. Post bought them, and then that combination became Post Consumer Brands. And so I was back to working for Post, which was kind of weird. I ended up they had been spun off by Kraft. I ended up working with some of the same people for a brief period of time that I had so long ago. It was fun to see them again. Okay, so very quick. That wasn't as quick as I wanted it to be, but that's kind of what food scientists do. I decided that I wanted to go a different direction, and I wanted to form my own company. And that's when Beakers and Bricks was formed. Started really working on this in earnest at the tail end of 2017, and then when I quit in the beginning of January of 2018, actually it was the end of January 2018, that's when things really started in earnest. Formed the Edible Knowledge brand, and this is our logo. So I started out with 2 books, and here we get into what the curriculum is. The first book it's an Introduction to Food Science series. And the first book is an overview, and the second one is water. So let me explain what's in these. These are actually the second editions. At the beginning of 2018, I think April was the first time I really sold anything, was where I had the first editions, kind of as a test market, see what people thought. Got some great feedback from customers who tried them out, and incorporated those into the second edition. The second edition. So let's take a look and see what they are. Okay, so let's take a look. So this is the first book, An Introduction to Food Science and Overview. And the way these are organized is all the same for all of my the Edible Knowledge Workbook series, with the exception of I do have one that's a little different, and I'll explain that here in a minute. All of them are intended for ages about 10 and up, with the sweet spots being junior high into high school, except for that one exception offering, which is new. Introduction to Food Science for Kids, which is intended for students as young as 6. And I'll go through all of those here briefly so you can see. So the first workbook has the first chapters on food science basics, what food science is. There's a science primer. In case your student doesn't have a large science background, this should be sufficient to get them through the books. There's a chapter on food processing, what that is, how it works, and my philosophy on that. And then a chapter on proximate analysis, which basically means what's food made of. And in all of these chapters, there's assignments and things that you do at the end, and I'll show some of those here in a minute. After those introductory chapters on what food science is and etc., you get into the science itself, to food science itself. So there's a chapter on water. There's a bunch of principles, food science principles presented, and then they're reinforced by experiments that you do in the kitchen at the end. And then there's a section at the end, and I'll show those in a minute, called What Do You Think? And then there's a chapter on carbohydrates, a chapter on protein, and a chapter on fats. And then at the end, there's a bonus chapter if people are interested, what the educational requirements are to become a food scientist, the kinds of classes you'll take, and that type of thing. And then there's also a glossary. So let's take a look. So this is what it looks like inside. I have these text boxes throughout that help to define terms that aren't defined in the text in the rest of the book, just to kind of call it out. And then occasionally I'll have these video boxes, and these are where, to help further understanding of a particular concept, I went to the internet and found videos that help to describe and to further the understanding of what's going on there, and then you can actually see it. Some of these videos I've made myself, not very many of them yet, but I'm working on increasing that number. Okay, so these are some of the assignments that I have in there. Here's the science primer. Okay, at the end of each chapter, there's this "What do you think" section that I mentioned, and there's questions that are asked that you're meant to answer in essay form. And that's the same as the chapter review questions. And then there's also a journaling idea. And some people do journaling, and it's kind of hard sometimes to come up with a good journaling idea. So actually, those were actually hard to come up with good creative ideas on what to, on something that you could journal or write about. The questions I'll say in here are not the typical questions you might see in a textbook, where you go back into the chapter and you can regurgitate what the highlighted text is and you're done. It's they're deeper thinking questions. They make you think past what you've read and what you've learned and then apply it. And so there's kind of really no wrong answer to those, but they really make you think. And I'm excited about that. One of the things that I found with homeschool curricula that was out there is it seemed like it was a mile wide and just an inch deep. So it covered a lot of stuff, but it really didn't go into much depth. My books are very different. I am the author of everything that my company offers right now, so I think they're awesome, but I am a little biased, I'll just have to say. My books are different in that they're much narrower in focus. This is food science, and then I have one on physics and engineering, and but they go quite deep into the concept, and that's partly why the age recommendations are 10 and up, with the sweet spot being junior high into high school, with the exception of the For Kids book, which I'll talk about here in just a sec. So, okay. So here we go. These are some of the other chapters that don't have experiments at the end, but they have assignments that you do. Okay, here we're into water. So here we talk about some of the characteristics of water from a food science standpoint. It's bipolar. Water activity is a crucial concept that many of you won't have heard of, but you'll recognize it because you see it every day. The density of water and ice, the formation of ice, implications of water and food, and again, more videos that you can go out and find. And then you get into the experiments, and I call them experiments. Let's make a mess. So sorry, yes, you're going to make a little bit of a mess sometimes in the kitchen, sometimes more than others. Kind of comes with it, with the territory. So sorry about that, but not really. It's fun. At the beginning of each experiment, there's a section that tells you exactly what you're going to need, all the way down to you're going to need a permanent marker or a pen, for example. And then you get into the experiment. And the way these are organized is you go through, do the experiment. There's some things where you fill it out. There's writing boxes where if you choose to write in the book itself, you can write in there. And then after that, there's a discussion that talks about what you saw and what was actually going on there. So some of the experiments, most of them reinforce what was discussed earlier in the chapters. Some of the experiments actually introduce new concepts that were better introduced through an experiment. But that's how each is organized. The experiment, here's the second one. You do it, and then there's a discussion explaining what happened or what you might not have seen if things didn't go quite right. So that's the way each one is organized. Here's carbohydrates, proteins, enzymes. Talk about enzymes here. Animal proteins, experiments. Here we talked about beef. So you get to learn about different ways of preparing beef, the same piece, and how they come out very differently from one another. Fats. And here's the bonus section. It talks about educational requirements. It's just very short for those who might be interested. Food science is a great career. If you think about it, people tend to stop eating last when there's trouble in the world. And if you go into a grocery store, everything you see has food scientists behind it in one form or fashion. There's a lot of food scientists out there, but it's not a lot of people know about it as a career, and it's a good career. References, and here's the glossary. And the glossaries will be comprehensive as you go through the books. So that's an overview. The second one was water, and while an overview has a chapter on water, the second workbook is all on water. So there's none of the introductory, what's food science, what's food processing, proximate analysis, none of that. It's just straight into the science. And for an example, there's 9 experiments that you do in the kitchen for an overview, and then in water there's 18, because you're straight into it, and it's just all principles and experimentation. And the way that you do these books is you do want to start with an overview, and then you can do water, and then any of the other three that I have yet to write. I have carbohydrates, proteins, and fats that will come out. Carbohydrates is next, and that should be out before the next, probably about February or so next year in 2021. That's the plan. So let's take a quick look at water. Okay, so here's the water. You'll see they look very, very similar. So there's a chapter, you go straight into an overview of the properties. And then the experiments, and they're organized the same way. And the discussion at the end of the experiments. And that's so basically the same kind of thing that you saw before. Stuff in water, so solutions and dispersions, colligative properties, freezing point depression, boiling point elevation, and vapor pressure lowering. These are concepts that you see every day, but you might not have heard them described that way. So that's why I say parents will love it as much as their students, their kids. I've actually had several sets of parents whose kids were too young purchase these for themselves because they're interested. And it can make you a better cook, having this knowledge. It can help you understand what went wrong on something that you were trying. Okay. So you get into some additional experiments. That's the format of these books. Here's a whole chapter on water activity, followed by experiments that you do. Some of the experiments have multiple parts. Some of them go longer, like for example this one. You prepare it and then you set it aside and then you look at it at different times over a couple, 2 or 3 weeks. Boiling, steam, and humidity, with explanations as to how all of these things work and relate to one another. Frozen water, so ice. Anyway, so that's water. So that's the second one. I mentioned that there's a third one that just came out, and this one I'm quite excited about. So while these ones were aimed for a little older children or older students, even into the high school, so they're intended for all the way through high school, for those who are interested and so inclined. I had a lot of call at the conventions I attended last year for an offering for younger students. And I didn't really plan on doing that, but I got kind of talked into it, and the more I thought about it, the more I thought it sounds like a good idea. Took me a while to figure out how to do it. This is the result. I got my first shipment of Introduction to Food Science for Kids just about 10 days ago now, and finally got to ship off some of those that I had pre-sold. I'm quite excited about it. It's a little different format, so let me show you. The look is pretty much the same, but the format is, instead of having chapters that go into the principles of food science and then reinforced by experiments at the end, you go straight into an experiment. You do the experiment, and it's a simplified. There's a little more simple experiments, and then at the end there's a discussion of what went on. So let me show you. Well, so these are some of the experiments. Soft and fresh to stale and old bread plus Eggman attack. Cornstarch into pudding? Really? And that one, for example, it has 3 parts to it. So some of them have multiple parts. Fun with cows and whipping cream, egg foam-tastic, green eggs that spin, huge marshmallows, cake for dinner, okay, maybe not. Gluey, gooey gluten in our food, bang puffing, fermentation is everywhere, eating brown apples, yuck. Water is active, have a cow, cream that's icy and smooth and lumpy. Hey, pineapple is eating my jello. So those are the experiments. There's 15 of them in this workbook, and I'll show you how it works. So there is right at the beginning just a 2-page what's food made of. So water, carbohydrates, protein, fat, ash, and just some brief descriptions of what those things are. And then you get straight into them, and I call them messes. So mess number 1, again, sorry about that. Although I will say at the very end of each one, it says, that's it, now let's clean up the mess. So you can remind your kids of that as you get to the end, or your students. So you go through the experiment. There's still the text boxes, although they're simplified. And yep, there's quite a bit of words, quite a few words in here. But the way that it's written is that even if your child or your student is too young to read so much, if you read it to them, they should be able to understand it. So there's kind of no way to get away from having words to explain what's going on unless I actually do a video of everything. Then at the end of each one, so there's places where you can write again, tables that you fill out, and at the end of each experiment there's the edible knowledge. So what happened? And some of those can get fairly lengthy in here with more explanations or videos and text boxes. There's the Eggman. Cornstarch into pudding, same format. I do have, in all of my workbooks actually, I have this red fire symbol. There's obviously heat and boiling and ovens and knives and things involved, so definitely you need to provide appropriate supervision for the maturity of your student. Don't want anybody getting hurt. And this is all part of the edible knowledge. Some of them I divide them up, and others I explain as I go along. So, okay, so that's the food science ones. They're the food science workbooks. The 3 that I have right now, with 3 more to come. Probably I'll have them all done over the next 2 years. That's the plan. Might be just a little longer than 2 years. These things actually take quite a while to put together. It's a lot of hard work, and it's kind of expensive. Okay, so the next one, here's the bricks part. And this is also new. It only came out in December of 2019. Getting great reviews and response on this. Introduction to Physics and Engineering. And this one uses Lego bricks as the experiments. So it's organized in the same fashion as the others, as the other edible knowledge workbooks. And this is still an edible knowledge workbook, as I'll show you. Where did they go? There they are. Okay, so they look very familiar. You have your experiments. Well, let me start off here. So these use this kind of Lego. It's the Technic Legos, or Lego bricks, which have gears and axles and universal joints, and they move. So you can actually build. A lot of people don't think they're actually Lego, official Lego bricks or elements, but they are. They're manufactured by the Lego group, and they're a lot of fun. I didn't know it, but I actually ended up with one of the very first of these sets way back when I was 11, 12, something like that is when they first started making them. And I still have a lot of those pieces. These things last forever. So, organized in the same way though. Whoops, I went the wrong way. Let me back up one. So at the beginning of the book, I describe parts, pieces, and terminology. So how are these things described? For example, axles, they're different lengths. And how are they described? Well, it's by the number of studs. Just in this example, this one is an 8-stud axle. So if you lay it next to a thing here, it's 8, these little round circles, they call it a stud. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 long. This one's only 6, and that's what they call it. It's a 6-stud axle. And then design numbers and item numbers. So in this case, this 2-stud brick with a hole in it is design number 3700, and so is this one, but they're different colors. So this item number takes it a step further, and that one signifies a red one of those, a red 3700. And this item number, 37023 or 370023, specifies a blue one of those. So I understand a lot of people, a lot of you, have a lot of bricks, probably a lot of Lego bricks at home, and so I have in here a detailed parts list of what you need in order to build all of the models, and I have 16 custom models that I've developed as part of this book. So you can go through this list and see what you've got, see what you might be missing, and where it's missing, I have exactly where to go to get them directly from Lego. And it's an easy thing to do. I'm not going to be providing the kits as an ongoing basis at this time because I have to buy them retail from Lego and then try and repackage them and sell them to you, and it's cheaper for you just to go do it on your own. Trying to make things as easy as possible for people. I do have some of those because I started down that path, and I have just some of those left. I think right now I have 14. At some point I have some extra pieces of one of them, and I'll probably make a few more, but that's it. Otherwise, just look through what you've got, and if you're missing some, then you can go and buy them directly from these two sites. I have it all explained exactly in there as to what to do. There are a few non-Lego parts, however. You need a wooden dowel of a certain diameter and wood and length. Then you need some micro paracord of a certain length and a certain size of a rubber band. Now those ones, I can buy those in bulk and put that together into a little kit and provide it to you inexpensively, and it'll be much less trouble for you just to buy that kit. So I would highly recommend that wherever you get the book, go onto my website and get this little kit. It's inexpensive, and you'll be set to go there, and then you can do however you want to with the Lego bricks themselves. If there's any of the kits left on my site, get them while they last. So, into the chapters organized the same way. Principles are described. Got your text boxes, video boxes, illustrations, most of which I created on my own. And then you get into the experiments, and in this case, instead of in the kitchen, you're building these Lego models, and again, there's 16 of them. So the beginning of each one, the parts that you need, and then you get into the building of them. And I have a series of pictures that you follow from this way and then that way, and building them, and then procedures on what you do to experiment with them to help understand the physics principles that they're demonstrating. And then again at the end, a discussion that talks about what you saw and what you may not have seen, and how that relates to physics if you didn't quite get it. Here's another one. It's my wife, by the way, demonstrating one of them. And then at the end, again, a what do you think section with the journaling idea, questions, journaling ideas, and a chapter review with the deep think questions. A lot of the models are based on simple machines because they teach physics very well. But you build these simple machines using the Lego bricks. Just interestingly, here this one I'm talking about leverage, but use an example here of a video of us taking care of a downed tree. So this is actually a picture of me and my son that my wife took. We had a huge oak come down last year, and we took a lot of videotape of us taking care of it with different types of machines. So fit right into this book. So levers of all different kinds, and then you build them. First class levers, second class levers, and those were kind of interesting to make in a way that you could experiment with them and move them around and demonstrate how where to put the load so that it's more effective and more of a mechanical advantage than other configurations. It was a lot of fun figuring out building these models. Third class levers. There's my son's arm. He's a buff dude, right? Inclined planes, wedges, and then a model that you can use to experiment with different angles. This is what's called a par buckle, which I had never heard of before. And that, just as an aside, this book was a lot of fun for me because food science is my expertise, and I have a fairly deep knowledge of food science. But while I've taken physics and engineering classes as part of my food science training, I'm not an engineer or a physicist. So I had to go back and review some of that stuff and then dig into some things that I didn't know at all. And that was a lot of fun because I enjoy learning. And it was a lot of fun putting this book together. Wheels and axles, pulleys, building a pulley tower, transfer of energy, so gears and axles, gear ratios, driver and follower gears. A lot of fun stuff, I think, but educational at the same time. And again, the discussion is fairly deep, so it's not superficial. Yes, you do get to mess around with Lego bricks, but you're learning quite a bit at the same time. Now, it's an edible knowledge book. So how can physics and engineering be an edible knowledge book? Well, at the end, I have one food science experiment unapologetically as a hook for those who are buying these things, this book just for playing with Lego bricks, as a hook to get you interested in food science and into my other books. So this is fun with gelatin and enzymes. There's actually a very similar one that's in the Food Science for Kids book. But just as a hook to try it out and perhaps get you interested in the other things. I did do something a little different for this one that I don't have in the first two, and eventually I might go back and do, or at least provide something online. I have hints for the chapter review questions. So I probably will come up with something like that and put it online for the first two books. Okay, so that's it for the 4 books that I have right now. I did want to show you very briefly my website and show you a couple different things that I'm doing. So when you go to beakersandbricks.com or dalewcox.com, this is what it comes up with. And it talks about what food science is, what's edible knowledge, and then all of the books are listed down here. And there's things you can go and look at. There's the table of contents. There's a sample chapter, so you can go back and actually read through some of the text and see if it's appropriate for your student or your child. And then all those video links. One of my customers indicated that it's a little tough to actually take those. They can be very, well, they're not logical at all. Of course, it's just a series of letters and numbers and asterisks and things like that. And they can be hard to type in and get exactly right. So she actually sent me a list of all of them that she made up, and I thought that was a great idea. So I put that together into this PDF, which you can download, and I can show it to you. It just has them all the, and this is by book. It has all of the video boxes by page number, and then you can click on the link, and it will take you straight to the video that I reference. Okay, so that's available for this book for an overview, and then also for water. Those video links, the sample chapter, and the table of contents. I actually have that for all of my books, except for I don't have the video links up yet for physics and engineering. I'll have that up shortly, and the same goes for Introduction to Food Science for Kids. But I do have the sample or the table of contents and the sample chapters or experiments. And then for physics and engineering, I have the physics parts and pieces list. For the first two, I also have proposed schedules for 8 weeks and for 16 weeks going through it. It just really depends on how you're choosing to do the curriculum. Some people are buying these as something fun and interesting to do over the summer and educational. Others it's their science curriculum for the year, and even others it's a supplement to their science curriculum. I really don't discount my products anymore, except for on very rare occasions, but I do offer promotions such as free shipping, and then I will offer something for free to be included along with my products. I do have bundles. Those are discounted, so if you buy more than one, like for example here, you can buy the first 2 food science workbooks, the ones that are geared towards 10 and up, and you get them for less money than if you bought them singly. And then if you buy all 3 of the food science books, similarly, it's a much better deal than buying them individually. And you get all 4. Here's a bundle of the print and the digital of the Introduction to Food Science for Kids book for just a little bit more than the price of one of those. Here's the Ultimate Bundle, and this one there's not an awful lot of. This one has all of the books plus all of the Lego parts, pieces, and the other parts that you need for the physics and engineering book. And again, for that one, there's a limited number of them that are available. I only have 14 in stock at this. So I'm very excited about this. It's a new. They're new, still relatively new. I mean, 2 of the books are brand new. One December, one in just here. I got my first shipment just 10 days ago. The Introduction to Food Science for Kids, getting great response. Please tell everybody you know about them, especially if you try them and like them. And watch out too. I have 2 other things that are coming down the pike. I plan on at the end of this month having an Edible Knowledge podcast. That'll put out a weekly podcast. And then I'm going to be converting some of these courses into an online class. It'll probably end up being a series of classes. I'm still fleshing that out right now. Some people like that as opposed to a print book, and then other people like the print book versus the online class. So just trying to offer these classes in as many ways as possible so that I can reach as many people as I can. Food science is a great career path, as I mentioned. It's a lot of fun. It's very interesting, and it's useful. It's useful in the kitchen. It's edible knowledge. It's knowledge that you can eat. Very excited about it. I appreciate you taking the time to listen, and I encourage you or invite you to go to my website and check it out a little more in detail, and I look forward to hearing from all of you. Thank you. Have a great day. $130